Good afternoon to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Monday, the 8th of October, 2012. Start off by looking at sea surface temperature anomalies, the departures from normal, or average is a better way to say it. Look at all the cold anomalies showing up here in the tropical Pacific. That wasn't there even a month ago. Here's what it looked like back in August, and here's what it looks like today. That doesn't look like an El Nino to me. Back in August, yeah, there was definitely some pretty solid warming going on, and it looked like we were well on our way to a warm El Nino event, or El Nino Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. But if we go to where it is today, not so much. Interesting that the climate models kind of blew that one, and in fact, the Atlantic Basin, which was supposed to be colder out here, pretty much running above normal, especially the Northwest Atlantic. Very few anomalies below normal except out here where Nadine roamed around for all that time. So interesting how things didn't really pan out for that El Nino event. That's where we were in August. Cooled off pretty significantly since then. We'll have to see what happens for the winter and how this shapes up for next hurricane season. We'll talk more about that later in November. Climatology, the next stop on today's little tour. This is where we would normally expect to see development a majority of the time for the first 10 days of October here. But look at this little cluster area right here, east and around the islands, east of and around the islands, I should say. That is also an area where we do have a concentration of development points over the last 100 years. So that'll be kind of where we're looking for the next possible development coming up. And that leads us to the graphical tropical weather outlook. There is 98L right here, so we'll do a little 98L down here. This is 97. Terrible drawing. Over near the Bahamas, don't worry about this area at all. I wouldn't say worry about this one, but definitely going to want to watch 98L, especially if you're here in the Lesser Antilles, as this looks like it's going to be headed in your general direction over the next several days as we get a pretty good pattern change out over the Atlantic with more high pressure in the steering layer building in than we have seen in the last several weeks. Looking at an infrared satellite shot of the Western Basin, here's 98L slowly trying to get its act together. This is 97L, stretched out, not very well organized, some convective activity over the Bahamas, creating a little bit of a nuisance there. And then we've got this big cold front that's come off, bringing chilly autumn weather to much of the eastern two-thirds of the U.S. This should sweep 97L out to see all of this frontal action. Now, the MJO, pretty favorable coming into the next couple of weeks. Right now, negligible, very little MJO activity observed in the western Pacific here in phases 7 and 6. But then the MJO forecast to come around through 8 and 1 over the next couple of weeks. And that should open the door for the possibility of Atlantic Basin or Western Hemisphere development. And if we add to that the fact that sea surface temperatures and the heat content value all through this region still fairly high, a little bit off the peak of the year already because it is fall and we're starting to lose the energy of the sun on a daily basis, but there's still a lot of ocean heat content sitting out there. It's still very much hurricane season. If we take a look at the models, this is the GFS. This is today's run, the morning run, 12Z, and this is 850 millibars in the atmosphere, about 5,000 feet up. This is a tiny little area of vorticity, very, very small spin. You can see sort of a curvature. If I take the telestration away and just point it out, you see how there's a little bit of a curvature to these wind flags here, the wind barbs. This is 97L, this is 98L. Again, don't worry about this. It'll be scooped up and sheared out off to the north and east by this strong trough coming off the east coast. If we go out into time, this is valid Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning. You see what happens with 98L. It's tracking along here, slowly trying to get its act together. And then by the end of the week, Friday into Saturday, it starts to really come together just near the islands. And then we also change the pattern a little bit, actually a lot, with high pressure starting to build in, weak troughing in between. This is something we haven't seen since, really August, as the pattern since then has been to allow everything to turn out to sea. If we go out finally to day 6 and day 7, notice a couple of things here. First, we have this big old ridge of high pressure trying to build in over the Atlantic, providing quite a warm-up here in the eastern United States, a reversal of where we are right now. And then we have what could be a tropical cyclone here in the Northeast Caribbean Sea, or just close to it, which is 98L right now. So the model, the GFS anyway, indicating that this does come up out of the deep tropics here and starts to turn northward, which is fairly typical of the GFS to do that. I would suspect that this will be a little bit more to the south, and maybe substantially so, and if so, it could come in through the Caribbean and start to track towards the more favorite areas of the Western Caribbean. The bottom line, we're really going to want to watch this over the next few days. This is the 500 millibar level, or the steering layer of the atmosphere, and it does show up there. So we do have it down at the surface, we do have it at 5,000 feet, and then it shows up at about 20 to 30,000 feet, 18 to 20 really, the 500 millibar level. And then there's that big ridge of high pressure sitting out over the central Atlantic. This was not there when we had Nadine and Oscar, and that's what allowed Nadine to form and then just kind of drift around out here aimlessly all that time, as there was just nothing out there to steer it one way or the other. Now the pattern looks to change, and we start to build high pressure again over the Atlantic and even portions of the Gulf. So this will be an interesting time period to watch and see what happens. In addition to all of that, upper level winds, you can see this clockwise flow, anticyclone sitting right over the eastern Caribbean, with the tropical system potentially sitting right in here. And so maybe, just maybe, we'll get Pauline, the next named storm, the P storm for this year, out of 98L. We'll have to wait and see. The eastern Pacific, quiet. Well, you got Olivia out there, but it's no threat to land. So that's a look at the tropics for today. I'll be talking about 98L for the rest of the week, so tune in and check out the video blog for that. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Always a pleasure to produce these videos for you on Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I'll be back to do that again tomorrow.